I've found ways to be lazy, and it's clever lazy. It's a cathartic moment when you realise you have to step up to the plate sometimes yourself. £11 a night to have a bed with no bills. That would have been a great way of putting some money away. I'm very open about challenges in life. I lost a six-figure sum in an investment fraud. You'd think one would know better. The prospectus was better written than some of the ones that I wrote and were submitted to the London Stock Exchange. It was a very, very compelling and convincing fraud. And sadly, if a fraud is a fraud from day one, it usually means that there aren't any loose ends that you can follow and pull the threads and find out what happened.
Right.
If it's fraud from day one, then it's often a very elegant structure that you can't get to the bottom of. But yeah, I was defrauded. I then studied what had happened with a bit of a tenacity that you might expect if it's your own money,
Okay.
And discovered that I had an ability to get to the bottom of situations like that. So I set up a counter fraud business, set up consultancy with a couple of partners, and I studied a postgrad in fraud management. And it was some years after that that I actually joined Save the Children International as their head of anti-corruption. So I made a profession out of it in due course, out of being defrauded. And the money that I had in the bank, I'd thought about doing an MBA, but actually, as it turned out, the learning that I had and the professional development that I had from having lost it was probably more valuable to me than an MBA might have been.
I don't know if you'd like to talk about this next bit, your father passing, your ex-wife, etc.
Yeah. It's if there are people watching and viewing this that it might help, then yeah, got to put it out there. So my father was very risk averse and was very comfortable at giving me suggestions on life and career and guidance on life. I had to make my own path, and it just so happened that he died as happens in life when I was in my mid-40s, at a critical part of life where you're making some major decisions on what your next steps are.
Yeah.
He would have been very comfortable for me to have a ploddy job in a stable business, earning a pension and with 25 days leave a year and a nice mortgage. It really wasn't for me. And so I had to, as people who've lost a big influence in their life, you realize that you're the grown-up now, and you have to make some decisions for yourself and for those who rely on you. And that was it's a cathartic moment when you realize you have to step up to the plate sometimes yourself. The ex-wife, we separated when I had two very young children, and then divorced. And basically, I had to make some choices. Do I make a home for my children, or do I leave them and focus on my career and move to the city? And the choice that I made was be a good dad and to be available for them. And so I then realized that the only types of job that I could do would be a job that meant every other weekend I could travel a long way away from London to be with them. And the flip side of that, of course, was I couldn't have two homes. So when I was working at the time for Save the Children, a big NGO with headquarters in London, I lived in youth hostels, which was a novel experience in my late 40s, but the right thing to do. And actually, I started thinking, I wish I'd done that when I was an investment banker, because for £11 a night to have a bed with no bills, when I was in the office until 3 a.m. anyway, and then back by 8:30.
Yeah,
that would have been a great way of putting some money away. But yeah, living in hostels, it was challenging, and you see other people that have been reduced to that sort of circumstance around you as well. Not just people backpacking around Europe, but people who have got nowhere else to go. And that was an interesting grounding at that time for me. Hey, we had a pandemic. The pandemic meant I lost the consulting gigs that I had at the time and retreated back to looking after the children, living away from London, and not earning anything for the best part of a year. So had to accept the weight of substantial debt to continue to manage life. And each of those circumstances put me in a position where there was no prospect of getting a 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, careerist kind of job,
Right.
because that just wasn't going to, well, look, hey, if you're going to be able to save £2,000 a month, $3,000 a month, that would have taken me at that time quite a few years of saving at that rate, if I could even do that, to start to pay back the debt that I had. So you have to look for other outcomes, other opportunities. And those other opportunities for me were starting to work in governance in blockchain and to be hired as to grow an ecosystem, to offer governance, compliance, regulatory risk advice to blockchain projects. And I was very fortunate to be able to do that, and very, very fortunately rode a bit of a cycle, the very end of the last bull run, with a few opportunities that normally I wouldn't have dared think about. But because I was in that situation, that was all I could do. And I was very fortunate, right place, right time, as sometimes happens. I'd banked a lot of karma, and maybe this was my opportunity to get some outcome there.
That's awesome. I mean, it kind of takes us quite nicely onto what happened after you left the military, and how does that story evolve for yourself in terms of, how do you go from being a captain in the forces to running blockchain, basically, to running a...
Well, Charlie, I think the interesting thing was, I remember that would have been, I mean, it ages me now, the late 90s. I was leaving the army, and we had a desktop that I shared with 2 other platoon commanders, and we would book time on it where we needed to write our reports on our soldiers and fill out exercise plans and so on, training logs. Certainly didn't have my own laptop. I mean, laptops back then were a couple of £1,000. So I was applying for a job in investment bank, of all things, corporate finance. I think it was because one of the things I really enjoyed, apart from working with soldiers when I was in the military, was being able to give a bit of specialist advice on a particular element of knowledge that I had. So I remember being on an operational tour, and a senior officer coming into the operations room and saying, "Tell me about that village," and pointing at the map to 16 officers in the ops room that were all staff that were all there. And company commander pointed at me and said, "Well, that's Tim's area of responsibility, that village." So I was briefing a very senior officer, and then a couple of years later, I was briefing the defense secretary on a similar circumstance on a particular part of something that I was specialist in. Didn't have the big picture. I just knew my little specialization. And the amazing thing was, months later, to then have strategic planning come back down through the chain of command that included a little germ of something that I might have recommended a few months before. Where would I get that kind of buzz of being able to influence something to a small degree and see my insight becoming part of something bigger? Well, there are a few ways you can do that, not into politics, but going into investment banking, I was able to, in corporate finance, give some advice to corporates, to board level C-suite executives. They could take on the advice that myself and the team that I was then part of might offer, and make strategic decisions and determinations and plans that included the recommendations we made. So I applied for corporate finance, a number of different banks. I went to visit the city. I went to see guys and girls that I was at university with who worked in the city already, because I'd had 4 years in the military. They'd gone into the city. And I remember walking into someone's trading floor and going, "Wow, everyone's got a computer. That guy's got 2. And my friend looked at me and went, "Oh dear, oh dear." So I went out to, I think it was PC World back in those days, and bought a laptop. Did an army resettlement course. You had funding to do a resettlement course over 8 weeks of an afternoon. So I went off and did a community access course in IT, and did a resettlement course of learning MS Office, and actually it was website building, which was crazy that I was able to do that. Manchester University, evening classes of how to build a website and how to use the internet in late 1998. So I went on that course and effectively learned back to front, top to bottom, of how to be a tech end user and to get rid of the fear. And then by the time I joined UBS, as it was, I was the most powerful and empowered end user that was in that part of the bank at the time, because most people used the tools on a desktop or laptop without questioning what was behind them, without questioning, okay, it can do this, but can it do more? I was always looking to try and find out what else these systems could do. This is back when people had Nokia phones that you could just about connect to a computer if you had the right software and the right cable, and you could manage your address book. I found a way to take the corporate address book of my colleagues in corporate finance, put it into a CSV file, import it into that document and then to that file format, and upload it into my phone. And I had all the senior bankers queuing up at my desk so that I could basically inject their little Nokia phones with the phone numbers of all of their colleagues at the bank, so they didn't have to add them one by one. It was just, well, yeah, I mean, this is technology. This is what it can do. Yeah. Doesn't everyone know how to do this sort of thing? Because you learn those sorts of things on the fly. You learn how to go to a website that has a website back in 1999 in banking that has corporate financial data. Companies have to present their accounts, as many viewers will know, in specific ways, in specific fields, so that it can be imported into regulatory news service and be imported into stock exchange filings and so on. So each field represents or is allocated a specific code. If you're then looking at aggregated data, all of the fields for P&L, balance sheet, multi-year for a British listed company appeared then in the same format, in the same fields, and you could download a website, import it into Excel, and then export it into a document that you were preparing for a client without having to type in all of the data again and again and again. You could just export it. And just little tricks like that. What I used to say is I've found ways to be lazy, and it's clever lazy. And I suppose looking back, I used to tell the soldiers to do that. If a soldier was cleaning or the platoon was cleaning their barrack block and they didn't do a very good job of it over the 3 hours it was allocated, we would send them back and tell them to clean it again, and we're back in 2 hours to check. Come back again, you've missed this, it's still not very good, we'll come back in another hour to check. And only then we'd pass them and they could go off and have a beer on a Friday night. I used to say to them, look, I'm not messing around, this isn't for fun. If it's good enough the first time, I'll fall you out. You get 3 hours of your own time. Just work harder, but actually you're working less in the long term. Be lazy, do it all right the first time. And so I often will look for, and I'll invest a lot of time doing something once, knowing that I can replicate it again and again in the future. But by God, it looks so complex and clunky the first time you're doing it. And someone's looking over your shoulder saying, why are you doing that? It's taking so long. Just copy and paste. Well, no, if I just copy and paste, I can't do this with a macro that I've just built 50 times in the next month. It was little things like that. And so having less fear of technology, which I did have to begin with, I was bewildered by it, and just diving into it and then thinking, what can I do with technology, got me into sort of an entrepreneur's mindset, I suppose. And I loved one of my first clients. I was very, very junior analyst at the bank, but we were working with Traffic Master. And this is a company that used to detect traffic flows and speed flows, and used to be able to get a dashboard monitored and tell you when you were coming up to a traffic jam or to slower traffic. And the guy that set that business up had gone to a yacht fair in Portsmouth, I think it was, and had been intrigued by walking onto a yacht that the yacht's security alarm could detect when he was walking. And he bought a few of these, put them on motorway gantries, and then got his wife to drive backwards and forwards at 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning when there's none of the traffic to confuse it. And he was tweaking with the settings of this security cam detector to identify that it would trigger when the car went below a certain speed and above a certain speed. And basically, by putting a couple of these cameras alongside each other, he was able to see when traffic was flowing freely and when traffic was slowing down. And that was the original genesis of a company called Traffic Master. And I loved what they did. It was just understanding the insight that an entrepreneur had to develop a product and find a niche that then became compelling to his market. So I used to love doing that sort of stuff. And I was very lucky to spend time in the tech group in London and then moved to San Francisco it would have been, I was going to go on New Year's Eve, 2001, but there was this thing called the Millennium Bug that everyone was a bit worried about. So I wasn't going to be in a plane over midnight on New Year's Eve, even though it would have been a pretty neat place to spend the Millennium. So I went, I think, on 2 days after the new year, 2001, and was working in the software and semiconductor team in San Francisco for UBS. Had a lot of fun out there until the dot-com bubble really burst.